Welcome back, Focus Learners, to another explainer. Today, we're jumping straight into one of the most intense, enduring debates in literature, all through the lens of Fyodor Dostoevsky's absolute masterpiece, Crime and Punishment. Now, we aren't just here to summarize a story for you. We're going to explore a profoundly deep question together. Are we actually in the driver's seat making our own choices, or does our environment basically make those choices for us? It's a heavy one, right? Let's get into it.
Okay, let's dive into this by looking at the absolute core of the debate. If you literally fix society, do all crimes just instantly vanish? Think about that for a second. This central question forces us to ask whether human beings are simply the mathematical sum of their surroundings, purely a product of where they live and how much money they make, or if there's something much more chaotic and ultimately free lurking inside of us.
Part 1. The Radical Environment Theory.
So, back in the 1860s in Russia, there was this hugely popular formula circulating. It was called Sreda Zayala, which basically translates to "the environment devoured him." Essentially, the thought process was that if someone committed a crime, it wasn't really their fault. It was just a natural, inevitable protest against a completely broken system. To radical thinkers of that era, like Chernyshevsky and those pushing these utopian Fourierist schemes, human behavior is entirely dictated by surroundings. They genuinely believed that a perfectly calculated, mathematically correct society would cure literally all human ills. Their logic was that if you build the perfect, flawless city, nobody ever commits crime because, well, there's simply nothing left to protest against.
Now, what's really interesting about this slide is how Dostoevsky uses Raskolnikov's friend, Razumikhin, to completely demolish this utopian theory during an incredibly tense interrogation scene. Razumikhin lays out a three-part objection. First off, he points out that the living soul is entirely left out of the equation. The radical theory treats human beings like mechanisms, like little gears in a machine, not actual people. Second, he absolutely mocks the reduction of human nature to mere housing. It's a caricature to think that just building better corridors and rooms is somehow going to magically perfect the entire human condition. And third, the historical objection. Life is a living, unpredictable process. It is not some ready-made logical wall that you can just neatly stack together like bricks.
Part 2. A crushing artificial city.
But here is where it gets a bit tricky, and Dostoevsky doesn't make things easy for his own anti-determinist argument. The meticulously crafted setting of the novel seemingly contradicts Razumikhin's optimism. Just look at Raskolnikov's room, his garret. It is literally only 6 paces long. The ceiling is so low that a tall man genuinely feels afraid to stand up. The wallpaper is yellow and peeling off. The text repeatedly describes the space as a cupboard, a chest, a coffin. And outside that room, you have the oppressive, suffocating heat, the dust, the lime, and the literal stench of Petersburg, which was this entirely artificial capital city built on a swamp. Raskolnikov is basically living a spire-like existence in this cramped, horrible room that physically and mentally seems to be crushing him.
And this crushing environment brings us to an absolutely gut-wrenching question from the character Marmeladov. He asks, "Do you understand what it means when there is nowhere left to go?" It's a powerful moment. Marmeladov is pointing out something crucial. Poverty might just be a terrible misfortune, but destitution? Destitution is something else entirely. Destitution is a brutal force that drives people out of human society with a stick. It paints extreme poverty as sheer, unavoidable coercion, completely stripping away any illusion that a person in that situation has free will.
We actually see this pure environmental coercion play out directly in Sonya's reality. Let's look at the steps here. Her stepmother is consumptive, her family is literally starving to death. So what happens? Sonya takes the yellow card to sell herself on the streets. She returns home at 6 p.m., leaves exactly 30 rubles on the table without saying a word, and just lies down on her bed facing the wall. The text does not pretend for 1 second that this was a free choice. It's presented as a horrific environmental inevitability. She had to do it. And as a quick side note, Raskolnikov's own sister Dunya mirrors this exact same kind of transaction, just in a more socially respectable form, by agreeing to marry the awful Luzhin purely to save her brother. In these moments, the environment appears to dictate absolutely everything.
Part 3. The Flaw in the Theory.
But we need to look closer at the evidence because Dostoevsky sets up a brilliant plot twist here. He basically grants the radical thinkers every single fact they want about how terrible the environment is, but he totally denies them their conclusion. How? By placing a living, breathing control case right in the middle of the novel, Razumikhin. Look at this comparison. Both young men are facing the exact same crushing Petersburg poverty. They're the same age, they go to the same university. But while Raskolnikov completely withdraws from life and ultimately commits murder, what does Razumikhin do? He tutors, he translates, he stays completely intact, cheerful, and generous. The environmental input is exactly the same, but the human outcomes are violently different.
And honestly, if we just follow the money trail, the radical environmental theory completely falls apart. I mean, think about it. If poverty was the sole, mechanical cause of Raskolnikov's crime, why does he systematically decline every single material solution presented to him? Look at the facts we have. He refuses the translation work Razumikhin offers him. He randomly gives away his very last 20 rubles to the Marmeladovs on pure impulse. He totally rejects the money sent by his own mother, and the wildest part? After the murder, he doesn't even count the stolen cash. He literally just buries it under a stone and leaves it there.
So the crucial point is finally revealed in Raskolnikov's dramatic confession to Sonya. He openly admits, not for my mother, not for humanity, not for the money. I wanted to find out whether I was a louse like all the rest or a man, whether I have the right. This is massive. The motive wasn't material at all. It wasn't the crushing environment making him do it. It was an intellectual ego test.
Part 4. Murder for a concept.
This brilliantly illustrates Dostoevsky's grand synthesis of the whole debate. Yes, the environment absolutely supplied the pressure. The guy was without a doubt crushed by his claustrophobic room and his poverty. But the idea supplied the direction. He was crushed by his room, but he killed for a theory. And why does this matter so much? Because it means that even with heavy, terrible circumstances, it was ideas that ultimately pulled the trigger. The deep irony of the whole novel is that Raskolnikov's intellectual theory, this idea that humanity is divided into ordinary and extraordinary people, is really just another form of determinism. It perfectly mirrors the mechanical worldview of the radicals he thought he was above. Dostoevsky's point is clear. Raskolnikov still had a choice. And because he had a choice, he is capable of guilt, and therefore, he's actually capable of true freedom.
Part 5. The native soil solution.
Let's move to and see how this builds into Dostoevsky's actual philosophy, because he didn't just invent these anti-determinist views sitting in a comfortable ivory tower somewhere. He empirically earned them through sheer suffering. Back in the 1840s, he actually circulated in those very same radical Fourier circles we talked about earlier, which got him arrested in 1849 as a member of the Petrushevsky Circle. But it was later, in the early 1860s, while observing convicts in the absolute worst imaginable conditions during his harsh Siberian exile in Omsk, that it clicked for him. He realized, firsthand, that human character is not just mechanically produced by awful conditions.
This realization leads directly to his positive alternative, a philosophy known as Podchvenichество, or the native soil movement. Basically, this was the belief that Russia's educated class had become completely severed from the people by westernizing reforms. For Dostoevsky, the solution wasn't Western liberalism or socialist math, it was spiritual communion. He's arguing that Raskolnikov's real issue wasn't a lack of money, it was a severance from humanity. Spiritual isolation is what caused the murder. And this is exactly why Raskolnikov's path to redemption eventually requires him to literally fall down and kiss the earth at the Haymarket. He has to reconnect with the native soil.
Now think about the epilogue for a second. Siberia represents the absolute worst material conditions in the entire book. We're talking penal servitude, freezing cold, intense isolation. Yet this horrible environment produces the one truly good outcome in the story, Raskolnikov's spiritual renewal. If the environment were truly determinative, like the radicals claimed, the freezing cold and misery of Siberia would have just finished him off completely. But instead, it renews him.
Part 6. Unresolved questions of agency.
As we wrap up, let's look at the wider context. Just 1 year after Crime and Punishment was published, Emile Zola released Thérèse Raquin in 1867, which took the exact opposite stance. Zola pushed hard for determinism, the idea that murder is just a mechanical outcome of a person's temperament and their circumstance. Comparing these two really proves that Dostoevsky's stance was a highly deliberate, radical choice for the time. Dostoevsky deeply understood that treating the environment as a total mechanical cause completely abolishes human dignity. Because if a framework can't hold anyone responsible for their actions, it also can't grant anyone dignity. For Dostoevsky, guilt, as heavy and painful as it is actually the price and the ultimate evidence of human freedom.
I want to leave you with one final, deeply provocative question today, especially when we think about class and feminism in this text. Does Sonya prove the soul is free, or does Dostoevsky only give agency to the educated? Think about it. Sonya is easily the most environmentally determined character in the book, seemingly given absolutely no choices in her life. So does her enduring purity prove that harsh circumstances can't touch a truly free soul? Or, critically,
Is she proof that Dostoevsky reserves true intellectual agency and choice only for the educated class, leaving the poor with nothing but pure endurance? It's a fascinating, lingering question that keeps us returning to this masterpiece century after century. Think on that, keep learning, and I'll catch you in the next explainer.